Yo, another stellar episode of Pack Chatter coming at you. But let's start with the sponsors. We got Legacy Bikes. Legacy Bikes, that's Legacy with an I. It's got all your balance bike needs for your little one to get started. The weather's starting to get nice. Get your kid out. Get them training on balance bikes, no training wheels. And they got a new program. They are going to do custom painted frames on your kid's balance bike. How cool is that? So hit them up and check them out on legacybikes.com or on Facebook. Remember, that's Legacy with an I. We're also brought to you by the New York State Bicycle Racing Association, or NYSBRA. NYSBRA is doing all that good behind the scenes work we need for racing, officials, upgrades. They put out thousands of dollars a year in grants. They balance the schedules, all that really tough stuff that has to happen. So check out their website for lots of great information, lots of great support for your event or for your team as a rider, or just follow them on Facebook and show them some love. We are also brought to you by The Rock, Crit and Grand Fondo, July 27 and 28. We're getting that event ready for you right now. It's going to be killer. We're going to launch it off with the Fondo this year from Deer Run Winery. We got 5 course options from 19 to 90 miles. We've got paved routes. We've got gravel routes. Everybody's getting a bottle of wine. Everybody's getting a pair of socks. We got live band. We've got catered meal. And we're only taking 100 people. That's all we can fit. So get registered. It's going to be a really cool party with some amazing, amazing courses. I can't wait to get people out on some of these rides. So check those out on our website at ridelcc.com. And the second day of that event, also on our website at ridelcc.com, is the Airport Crit. If you've been to the venue before, you know it's amazing. If you haven't seen it, you got to see it. You can see the whole course from the side. It's a funky 5-turn course, no road hazards on it. So it's even though it's technical and fast and hard, it's also safe. You're not hitting curbs and telephone poles and traffic and all that other kind of stuff. We got Silver Lake Brewing coming up to serve craft beer. We've got Vertical Cafe serving drinks and treats. And we got Smoke in the Valley Barbecue. We'll have music and games. It'll be a great party. It's a great spectator event. It's a great racers event. So you can sign up for that day on Bike Reg or check it out on ridelcc.com as well. And join that party. It's going to be a great summer event, and we hope to see you there. All right, enough of that. Let's get into the show. Today's guest is an absolute legend. He is a 3-time Olympian, a silver medalist. The list goes on and on and on. He's a coach now. Been in some of the biggest races and against some of the biggest racers in the world. Just really, really amazing. I was bummed that I didn't get a chance to jump into this one. I had a conflict, so I was really bummed that I didn't get a chance to meet him and talk to him, and hopefully he'll come on again, and I can. But he's a good friend of Todd's, and he and Todd have a great conversation, and I enjoyed listening to it and learned a ton. So please check out the legend, Brian Walton.
You'll never go out on a training ride and dig that deep.
Awesome. We won gold.
They're life rides.
I'm like, dude, I'm still figuring this out.
Lose sight of the fact that it's whoever goes faster.
This isn't a road race. This isn't a mountain bike race.
The sensei of sprint, Todd Shesky.
My eyes are coming out of my head. Just get in here.
All right, well, tonight we have Brian Walton with us, and really cool to have Brian on the show with us. An extremely accomplished cyclist, definitely from my era, maybe a little before me, maybe a couple of years, but I definitely recall getting on the hard end of some of Brian's moves. Extremely talented cyclist, 3-time Olympic silver medalist, Olympic team member, I should say, Olympic silver medalist in the 96 points race, and Pan Am gold medalist 3 times, and 10-time national champion. I mean, just the list of accomplishments is very long, and that's just the biggest stuff. And it's really my pleasure to have Brian and a very good friend of mine as well. And so I'm pleased that he was able to come on. And so, Brian, how are you tonight?
I'm doing great. Thanks for the great intro, except for the part about before your time, Todd.
Come on, I'm trying to keep myself a little young here too, right? I do recall vividly you though being on the front and especially in the Saturn years and really just putting the coals to the fire, and I'd be like, I don't even know who's up there anymore, man. I'm just hanging on for grim death back here. But it was always great racing out there. I mean, you definitely were an animator for sure, and I think would be maybe even an understatement to say you're an animator. So, give us
I
something
did
a
like
little background on how. Go ahead.
I was going to say I did like to stir the pot on and off the bike. I know one of my greatest strengths was time trialing, getting away. So it was a means to the end, to be quite honest, Todd.
Yeah, it was definitely the end of a lot of guys when you'd hit it. That's for sure. So, did I don't recall, and maybe you were there or not, and I don't recall this specifically. When we did those Vanwood races up outside of Toronto back in like '96, and I know Saturn was there because I remember there was this day this crosswind hit. And I remember right before the crosswind, I said to my teammate Richard, I said, Richard, we got to move up because we're going to hit this crosswind, and those guys are going to absolutely explode this field. And we moved up to some weird, I don't know, maybe 15th place or something. And the thing completely went to echelons immediately, and the race was just blown to bits. And I don't remember which one of you guys did it, but or I don't remember much of anything of that other than it was really hard. After I finally got dropped, I rode literally for an hour at like endurance after I got dropped. Before anybody ever caught up to me. That's how much gaps there were in the thing. And I was like, I was out there and I could hear birds chirping. I was like, is there even a race more? I'm so blown up. I'm just riding around and like nobody caught up to me forever. So I don't remember if you were there or not in that one, but those were some hard races.
I can't take credit for that year. At that time in '96, I was preparing for my second Olympics and making a comeback from some knee surgery earlier in the season. And my preparation for the Olympics was honestly putting in a significant volume after having knee surgery, and really, I'll say, beating up on the locals in Maryland. And it was riding the races, it was doing the races there, and really having a laser focused training program in '96. And the nice thing about '96 is I was blessed to have knee surgery, and the bike was taken away from me. And in April, I'd quit the piece race, and it was a low point for me. And it took me almost a month to realize that I needed to have my knee just scoped, and it was ever so such a little bit of scar tissue in my knee. But luckily, we had an amazing team doctor at the time, Dr. Thomas Breen. Told me to come back to his place, gave me the royal treatment, already knew what he was going to do. He was just putting me through the motions, had me scheduled for surgery. And that was literally, I think, the third week of May. And the Olympics was July 26th. So I was at a low point at that point, but with the help of a great team and my coach and Dr. Breen, able to pull off probably one of my best wins of my life.
Great. So, like, how did you wind up coming upon the injury? Well, we'll step back a little bit and kind of get you up to that point. But how did you kind of come upon it? And was it something that kind of was kind of slow coming on, or how did you identify that this was something you needed to do, or was it from a crash?
No, it wasn't from a crash at all. It was really the mentality at the time, and it wasn't the philosophy less is more with training. It was more how much training can you do.
Right.
And I think it was just a overuse injury. Back at in the 80s, the philosophy was volume, volume, volume with intensity. When we would look at 20 plus thousand kilometers in a year with minimal rest days. So it was really just a cumulative effect, I think, of pushing extremely big gears and the high volume.
Right. And when you say high volume, like, I mean, you were getting ready for Olympics and doing all these things, and riding a really successful pro career. When you say high volume, what's that mean to the local guy now when you say high volume?
We would race first year pro, 110 races at the pro tour level, and probably 23,000 miles a year.
Wow. Yeah. So yeah, that translates into about how many hours a week were you in saddle time?
A lot.
25, 30 hours. Those are some big weeks. And I think sometimes, people think of high volume and like, they did a 4 hour ride or something. That's like, no, it's a lot of 4 or 6 hour rides. And I like sometimes it's again gets a little lost in translation of, from an amateur to, like you said, 100 and some races in a year is a lot of race days as well. So, I
It,
mean,
it it certainly is, and these weren't short races at that time at all. So it was pretty much race and then recover. It was the winter, spring when you were doing the big volume of riding.
right. And interestingly, as someone who coaches now, and when you look back and what things would you kind of see as doing differently now with the knowledge you have now as opposed to then, just as how things have changed, and what things are kind of the same.
That's a loaded question. Things have changed significantly. Obviously, it's much more laser focused with training, uh, whether it's racing, whether it's measuring with a power meter. I mean, it means Sky now, uses the term, the incremental gains. That's the interesting term that's used now, the catchphrase. And I think that's the most significant aspect to it at this stage. Back then, it's like, let's see how much we can throw against the wall and what's going to stick, and whoever's left standing is going to do very, very well.
Right, right. A little bit more of an attrition and just really just keeping on, almost a little bit even hailing back to a little before our time of, just kind of the Merckx era, post Merckx era was just you just rode a lot. People just rode a lot and just did a lot of hard riding. And then once you got into racing, you just kind of that was where you got a lot of your intensity from. But and it was a little different than that. Started to change a little bit in the '80s time frame, but still seems even from a pro level, you guys are just heaping on lots of riding.
It
Um,
certainly were. I mean, there was. I mean, a lot of structured intervals. Greg LeMond, your Phil Andersons, they're the ones that were ahead of their time. And this is only the mid to late '80s when intervals are really starting to come into vogue in the pro peloton. Back before that, it was Paris Nice was a warm up race, and whoever was fast could win it. That would never happen in today's age.
right.
Back by the '80s, I was starting to get more specific, and I focused on peaking a little earlier in the season when people weren't ready. And then when that became in vogue, then it was okay. How am I going to transition and look at other opportunities that played into my strengths? But I
Right.
mean, late '80s. I mean, early '90s, I mean, I had a teammate that was telling me I shouldn't be doing intervals because that's selfish bike racing. And you need to be, as a pro, just riding big miles all the time. You're just training for a time trial and trying to explain to a European that if you do intervals, you're going to be stronger, therefore able to help the team out.
Right.
It takes a little bit of explaining to do.
Yeah, yeah, that's probably a delicate balance, and especially if they're in control of your contract. Right? So how do so I got this chance, and then they're gonna accept what I'm saying, and if I don't, then they're gonna be like, look, this is what you're gonna be doing now. So I'm sure that was a fun one to navigate, if you will. So, um,
But
but
it's these experiences, Todd, that have helped me now as a coach. and learning from races, how to react, how to be part of a team, and how to prepare. And I look at it almost as, obviously, you can train yourself and you're going to get more successful over a certain period of time. But the value of a coach is a coach can come in, he's going to identify the limiters, and he's going to be able to help the rider physically, mentally, whatever those limiters are. Technique, it can be anything, and take those controllables and focus those on the athletes. That is the value of the coach. That's where that, I'll call it, that slope, that success slope, is steeper.
Right. Yeah, I think it's something that, and especially in this day and age, I mean, when we look back, we start talking about, things that happened in the 80s, and there wasn't technology to be able to even work with, coaching remotely, being able to look at power files, do all these really cool things that we can do now. And, and I think, that was a whole kind of a different space. And now you kind of get to this space where it's like you can do all these kinds of things, but then to not lose focus on the things of the mental aspects and the psychological part of racing, and the relationship part of it, and then technique and tactics and all those things that make bike racing more than just pounding out watts. Is kind of an interesting thing that, from looking back to an 80s time frame, and how all those things have kind of changed, but yet still the same. And
Exactly.
and being able to bring those experiences forward is more than just like, and you hear it, I hear it, we all do, about, hey, I'm just going to get this training plan, or I'm just going to buy this book. And it's like, yeah, and those are helpful things. And you and I both encourage people to be educated bike racers, because it's better in the long run, because then they're better collaborators. But there's so much information out there now. It's one of those things where it's like you're drinking from the fire hose. You're starting a race, and people are like, I'll get this program, and then I'll be good. And it's like, yeah, but you're missing all the other things that make bike racing. And I think, somebody with your level of experience, again, and saying, like, you came through these changes in paradigm of training and so forth, from 80s all the way up through, up to present day. And so you could be able to draw from a lot of experience, say, yeah, some of those things are things that are true, are just true. I mean, you got to have those hard days in the bike, and there's just no way around it. And there's no changing a 6-hour endurance ride. It's still, you still need to do a 6-hour endurance ride or a 7-hour endurance ride. And those things don't change. And I think, and tactically in the races doesn't change, and being smart and knowing how to race. And so I want to go back though a little bit, since kind of touching on, like, I was kind of touching on you going back through some of the eras and everything. How did you get started in bike racing? When did you really start racing? I mean, because you've had this really a good long career. I mean, how many years you were racing as a pro, and then before that, kind of how did you get started, and kind of what was your trajectory, and kind of give us a little timeline here.
Okay. It started for me in 1984, and I hadn't been too successful scholastically. Came from a father that had a deep, rich educational background, master's from MIT, and thought I was going through ROTC and becoming a naval officer, engineering. I didn't do too well first year. Didn't really apply myself. School came kind of easy to me in high school, and I honorarily withdrew from the military, and I went back home, regrouped, got the help from my father from a community college, started going back to school, and I started riding a bicycle to and from school. I was 18 years old, and that's how I got started. And I didn't really have much money to my name. I was working at McDonald's. It was pretty much a low point of my life, and couldn't even afford Christmas gifts for my family.
Right.
And next thing I know, I'm loving the bike, and I'm riding back and forth from school, and I join a club locally in North Delta, just outside Vancouver, River Road Cycling Club, I believe it was called. And we had local time trials every week. And I just got hooked on this. And I had no idea how to train. But we went out to a race in Victoria. And we're coming back on the ferry to Vancouver. And I'm hearing these guys talk. And they're telling me they're doing 300, 400, 500 kilometers a week. And I'm kind of embarrassed. I was tracking my mileage at that time, and I was doing about 115 kilometers. I would just hammer out to the stop sign 20 minutes away and hammer back.
Right.
No idea what I was doing whatsoever. And when I heard that, my eyes were, they were wide open. I was finishing about 8th, 9th, or 10th in these local races. I thought, wow, I think I could do something if I was doing what they did. And that night I went home and I wrote a training plan for myself for 6 weeks.
Right.
And in the 5th week, I won my first bike race and I was hooked.
That's awesome. And so when you look back at your training, so what did you base that off of? I mean, was it out of because I'm looking back to, mid 80s, and I was reading like Runner's World, right, to find out like how to train like endurance stuff and whatever. So how did you kind of piece that together when you wrote yourself this plan? Or was it just like, I'm just going to keep just increasing mileage, man, just going to kill this thing?
Runner's World. I've got to tell you, that's
serious.
Seriously, I came from a running background, and it was based on a hunch, based on a conversation, and Runner's World. Go
funny.
figure.
Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, because I was totally reading Runner's World, and I was like, "Hey, look, they got these things called fartleks in here and intervals. I'm gonna try this stuff." And yeah, that's pretty funny. But it's kind of funny. That was the resource for cycling, was looking at Runner's World for both of us. So then you run this race, and then you just kind of kept going from there, right? I mean, so it just kind of kept developing, and of course, when you start winning, everybody wants to know who you are. I always find that's always an interesting dynamic, and all of a sudden, like, people start to like, who's this guy? And he just won this race, and then it kind of grows from there. But it wasn't too many years of you doing that before you were able to make a jump to quite a higher level.
It wasn't too long. That was 1984, and by 1988, I was riding my first Olympics, and
wow.
I attribute that success to my first coach, my main coach, and that's Merrick Mazur. He showed me, what it takes, the hard work, and that was a significant point in my life. It was just, the timing was perfect. The dedication that he put in, and still does to this day with athletes, is absolutely amazing, and I'm grateful to have met him.
Yeah, how did you connect up with Merrick?
Merrick was coaching the British Columbia team at the time, and it was the Canada Summer Games, and I was just young enough. I just squeaked in. It was under 19, and so I got to be coached by him.
Interesting. Yeah.
And that's how it took off. I mean, it was every Sunday we were doing these crazy hill reps, and it was very Polish, very Eastern European, hardcore training program. And the funny thing was, all the naysayers in British Columbia at that time, it's like, which was pretty much everybody, just saying, "Oh, Merrick's training them too much." It's like, "Oh, they're going to peak too early." And my line was, "I'd rather peak once than not at all."
Great. Yeah, great response, right? Yeah, they're worried about too early. Well, hey, better than not. That's great.
Exactly.
Yeah. But yeah, he was definitely he still is a really great resource in cycling, and has coached a lot of really top athletes. So obviously a really good fortune for you, being where you were at the time and being that young, and being able to come into that kind of an environment would be really transformational. I mean 4 years on of riding is not a long time frame.
No, not at all.
So so that was your first Olympics. How did the first Olympics go, and what was your takeaway from that? And was this track or road, by the way, too?
It was the road race and the team time trial, 100K team time trial. And I call 1988 in Seoul, Korea, the big non-event. Boy, did I learn a lot. It was baptism by fire. We were over there way too early. Got stale. Uh, there were so many factors that just didn't play into my hand, and unfortunately, on that day, I tried. I was in some moves and everything. I think it came down to a sprint, and I may have been low 30s in the road race. In the team time trial, we had a great result. For us at the time, it was I think 13th. We fell apart towards the end on that day, just extremely hot, and few of us just didn't have it that day.
Right. Yeah. And heat is a big factor, and especially if you don't have time to acclimatize to it outside of being in a foreign place. And I think they probably make more of an effort these days with food and those kinds of things. But I think it was a little different game then. If I'm not mistaken, it was kind of like you kind of got a little more localized stuff then, as opposed to having things as catered to now. But you came away from it, and I think I remember one thing of the '88 Seoul Olympics, and I think is because Bob Miansky was fourth in the road race from the U.S. And the only reason I know that is because I lined up next to him the '89 cyclocross national championships, and I remember thinking, "Wow, this is Bob Miansky," and he was fourth of the '88 Seoul Olympics. That's what I remember of the '88 Seoul Olympics. So, yeah, I mean, but you came away from it. Learned a ton of stuff. And how did that play into '96? And so, I mean, that's 8 years later. And what had happened in between there, and then what did you take away from '88 going into '96, and kind of what happened in that interim?
I think you can chime in the music my way now for '96, and that was the biggest takeaway from '88. And I was back with Merrick at this point since 90, I think 95. We started working together after I had turned pro for numerous years, and I had changed my focus from the road to the track. And I mean, we know what was going on in cycling during that time, and I had been over in Europe. I had raced in Europe for 4 years. I'd been successful. I mean, I'd won world tour, now world tour time trials, Pays Basque. I joke about one of my claims to fame is I motivated Miguel Indurain to win the Tour de France 5 years in a row. I beat him in a time trial in his hometown in Pays Basque, I think by 1 second. And he didn't lose a time trial for the next 5 years.
He got beat by a Canadian too. Like it wasn't even a European. Got beat
by a Canadian, yes, of all things. Go figure.
Right. That's awesome.
Oh, when '96 rolled along, unfortunately, I had knee surgery, and we were kind of messing around with everything. But I had this secret weapon, and it was cycling was taken away from me. And it didn't matter what Merrick threw at me, I was eating it up. He could not give me enough intervals. And I think that was probably the best thing that came of it. I was allowed to prepare, and there was a whole political battle beforehand with me. And I won't get into the long story of it, but the year before, I had qualified Canada in the road race. I'd won down in Argentina, and I'd also won the points race. And I was planning on riding both events. But politically, they took away my road race spot because I wasn't going to train with the team, and fed me a bone and still gave me my spot in the points race. So that upset me, but it motivated me even more. And I wasn't going to change the road race aspect of it, and moved on and just laser focus on the points race. Now, I was allowed to pretty much do whatever I wanted to do, and that helped me out significantly prepare. I literally was still training in Allentown when the Olympics started, missed opening ceremonies. I was doing a local race in Lidditz, And the funny thing was, I mean, I had a lot of the amateurs complaining that I was in the race, and I had known the organizer, and I had called him up before, and I had a Canadian license, so I was actually allowed at that time. This is when licensing was transitioning from pro to amateur, and I just had a UCI license. Well, I was able to race in Lidditz, and I had told them, look, I don't want any entry fees. I don't want any prize money. Excuse me. Just let me race the race, but don't tell anybody, about the prize money or anything. I want everybody to race me. And so I ended up winning the race. I got to prepare the way I really wanted to do. Next thing I know it, my roommate at the time, Clara Hughes, wins Canada's first medal in the road race. And here I am training with her in Allentown, and she had left a couple weeks before for the Olympics, since the women's road race was the first event. I'm like, geez, nothing like putting me under pressure here, girl.
Right.
It's like my roommate's already won a bronze medal. I'm like, son of a gun.
I gotta get something. I don't want to be empty-handed now.
Exactly. So, I got to show up. I got to with Merrick. He was already down there preparing Clara, and I got to fine tune, and it was just the absolute perfect preparation for me. And I ended up having the best day of my life on a bike.
Yeah. I mean, that's all. How did the race kind of unfold? I mean, so the points race is it. I mean, you're focused on this. You got the road race kind of unjustly taken away from you from some political things. So you're here, and now you're just like, okay, this is it, and this is, and did you only do the points race at the Olympics then? There wasn't like an omnium, or there wasn't anything else. This was it. This was the event.
This was the event. It was just the points race in '96, and that's all. And that's all I rode. And I went in as a dark horse. I think five guys, all the favorites, lapped the field early on, and I got away just as they were lapping, and I took a lap by myself and garnered a lot of points and moved up to fourth place overall. And some of the guys that lapped the field didn't even know I had lapped the field. In fact, I think Stuart O'Grady in Australia, he ended up finishing third. They filed a protest afterwards saying that I wasn't second. It's like, you guys kind of missed that. Actually, he was. So I lapped the field, and I'm like, okay, what do I do now? I'm in fourth place or fifth place at that time, and I'm hanging on for dear life.
Right.
And it just fell in my lap. The Spanish rider who had lapped the field puts in an attack with maybe 20 to go, and the whole field chases, and everyone's going nuts because he could win the overall, and the Italian is pretty much got it locked up, except for watching these four guys. And then I roll off the front, I counter it, and get away with the Ukrainian guy, and we stay away. I knew at that point that I was firing on all cylinders, and I could beat him at the end. And I actually even gave him the points with 10 to go, and took second place points, and won the final double points to move from fourth to second place.
Wow, that's an exciting race, and to give people an idea of how focused this is. I mean, how long is that points race for at the Olympics?
It's 25 miles, 40K, 160 laps on a 250-meter track. And I think I still have the heart rate file, Todd, I could dig up. I think we did it in something crazy like 46 or 48 minutes. It was extremely, extremely fast.
Yeah, I mean, it's fast, and and think about the focus that you have, because this is it. This you don't there's no do over, there's no second event. It's not like when you go to a stage race, like, well, I didn't do well on that stage, but I get out now, I got my head in the game. It's like you got to show up ready, and this is the race, and it's not that long. You don't have a lot of time to make up for mistakes. It's like I always look at the timed events on the track, like you don't have time to not have a good start or to not have a good lap, and you don't have time in a points race that's relatively short. I mean, it's shorter than most criteriums, and you got to keep scoring points every number of laps. I don't know what it was on that Olympic track there, because it was a short track. It wasn't even a 250, right?
No, it was a 250.
Was it? Okay.
Yep.
I remember if the Vanadrome. It was that. Was it? No, it wasn't the Vanadrome. It was.
No, it
I
wasn't.
was thinking. No, no, no. That was. Yeah, I'm confusing my facts there. But yes, I remember when they built that track. But yes, I mean, you look at like you got all these sprints, but you got to be on your game, and the fact that you're there focused, um, for one race for 45 minutes and to make it happen. And at what point you kind of said you knew you were on your game? Was it when you took the lap, or was it when you? Because I mean, that took some guts. First of all, four guys just lap the field. You strike out. That takes some guts to say I got to make something happen. But you also went right before they lapped, so you were not lapped at that point yet either. So you were able to keep scoring points out there, which is maybe a really critical part of that race.
It was, but I knew I was going to do well when I was sitting in the pits before the start of the race, and I saw my heart rate at 132. And I kind of smiled to myself. I'm like, I haven't seen this resting heart rate just before a race when I finished third at Grand Prix Eddie Merckx time trial uh, a few years before. So I had a very quiet confidence to myself
Right. So
in the pits beforehand.
So that was your first kind of indication. Then when you went out there, was just kind of the legs were there, and you didn't have any apprehension. Then when you were like, hey, I did you set out to take the lap, or you're just like, I'm just going to try to not get lapped because I know I can get points because I'm going to be the unlapped rider. What was the strategy you were trying to do, or was it just like on impulse, hey, I got to get away?
Races, you just know. I mean, the good cyclists, they just know. They know when to react, and you do it. I mean, what you want to do is play up your strengths. I was a time trialer. I put on a big honking gear for, well, be a tiny gear now for that time, and I played up my strengths. I saw that opportunity at that moment in time, and I went for it.
Yeah, I think that's an important thing. And you talk about coaching and different things, and and people's psychology, and to know that about yourself and to have that confidence, and just saying, hey, I know how to race. I know I say it to guys that I work with, and like, come race day, it's like you already know the strategy, you know your strength. Just make sure you play your strengths. Don't play by other people's laid out rules for you, and make sure you play your strengths, and then really just you got to let the race unfold, and you got to look at those moments, and recognize that this is the moment, and don't let it slip through your fingers, and just
Exactly the case. One kid I'm coaching now, Johnny Brown, he's the current U.S. Pro Road Race champion, and I've been coaching him for 4 years. And we don't talk tactics, very, very rarely. Ironically, we did talk just before U.S. Pro Championships, and hey, Brian, this is what I'm thinking. I'm going to be aggressive this year, and I'm like, hey, I like it, and
right.
I'm going to go for the early break. I know once I'm there, I can be with the top World Tour guys, but I need to be up the road first. That's really about it when it comes to talking tactics with Johnny. Now, on the other hand, you have the other individuals I coach are the young pups, the hot tubes juniors, and there, it's a lot more detail, a lot more. Uh, uh, and I don't want to say beginner tactics, but you're going through a lot of the basics, and you've got to go through those steps first before you get into the extreme specific details.
Right, right, and you want people to be able to learn, and when they're young and they're juniors, or even if a guy is 25 and he's not used to racing, yeah, you want to go over those things and what are the options, and I find myself, talking to people sometimes like, well, why did you race this way, or why did you race that way, and finding a lot of people will settle, instead of thinking how they can win, they're too busy thinking about how they can kind of get the best result. Like, well, I was kind of happy because I was in the break, and then they don't do anything. And it's like, yeah, but you just did the hard part by getting in the break, and now you're not executing how you're going to win. And getting people to take it to that next step, or how to work with a team and different things. But when you got guys that are experienced and really know, like one of the guys I work with, tore off, and he just won the Grand Fondo World Qualifier in Cambridge this week. And we talk about courses and strategy on a pretty high level, but he's a smart bike racer, and I just usually reinforce like, you're a smart bike racer. I don't, not much for me to tell you. You know where to look for the moves. You know who the guys are going to be, and you just need to be confident that you're there right now. You have all the tools you need, and sometimes that's all the psychology people need is just the confidence that they can do it, and finish it off. And you certainly were entering that confidence, and I'm sure Murik being there, and you guys did the work. And I think back to. Gordon Singleton talking about when he was at the World Championships and things, and he always said like, he always wanted to line up and know that he did everything he could do. He didn't leave anything undone, and he always went in there with that confidence. And similarly, hearing your training and doing anything, and you did things your way, and you said, look, I've done everything I know to do. I didn't have to compromise anything getting here, and you can be quietly confident that I did the work. And now it's time to just let it come to fruition. So post Olympics though. So you had 96 Olympics, and your pro career keeps going, and what kind of highlights happened after the 96 Olympics, and then how did you kind of transition out of pro cycling, and what things came after?
Yeah, so I did one more Olympics. I was actually closer to getting a gold, even though I finished 9th in 2000 in the points race, almost lapped the field. Didn't happen. Also rode the road race. My last race, crashed out of it. And my career was over after 12 years. And I had been thinking about it since 96. I knew I wanted a run of 4 more years, and I had met my wife. We were married in 97. Wanted to start a family. So Dana and I decided to settle in where she was from, just outside Baltimore, Maryland, and I became a coach of an amateur team, and that was Snow Valley Springwater Company. And I worked for the company as a wellness director, but main focus was helping to organize a race that they had done in the past and coaching their amateur team and club. And that was a very rewarding experience. I really thought I was going to become a Canadian coach at that time, just after the Sydney Olympics, but I was rightfully talked out of it from a Canadian coach. He's like, go cut your teeth, smaller scale. And a mutual friend of Dana's and myself, Arch McCowan, said, hey, I want you to have an interview with the owner of Snow Valley Springwater. And Arch, knowing him from the last few years of racing in what was D20 Mabra at the time, and racing against Snow Valley. So went down, had an interview, and next thing I know, I've got a job as a wellness director coaching an amateur team. Okay, what am I doing here, and what am I going to do next?
Right. Actually, a very good friend of mine was involved with the Snow Valley. It was John Worsing.
I did coach John for years. He's amazing individual. Absolutely awesome. Yes.
Yeah, we were juniors together, and he was always super, super strong. And then I remember those Snow Valley years, he was killing it. He was a very, very good athlete. So it's funny. I wasn't aware that you had coached him during that period either. So that explains a lot.
So that would have been from 2000 through 2003, and in 2003 we won the U.S. championships with Mike Voigt. And we had a young stud at that time, Scott Swiezanski, that was on a team. We just had a fantastic team. They just gelled, and it was Arch's guidance as the president of the club, mentoring me. It was John Worsing. It was the entire team. They just embodied teamwork, and it was a fun group to coach.
Right, and I would say a very successful amateur program as well. I mean, they were definitely a squad to be reckoned with, no doubt about it. So, and probably a lot of your influence in there. So, and how much of Murick's influence was on you as you taking on coaching this team? I mean, we all pick up stuff from people we work with, and the goods and the bads.
Yes, yeah. I mean, Merrick was definitely, from a coaching standpoint, was a significant influence. But I also had Ron Heyman. I had a Russian gold medalist by the name of Yuri Kashirin. I had Eric Vandenine. I had this wealth of knowledge that I got to work with over the years. So I created what I thought the best of all the worlds from each individual to make what is kind of my coaching style and philosophy to this day.
Right. Yeah, and I think it's really cool when you kind of can pull some of these really good elements from these different sources, and we all do that, but we become kind of a mixture of these really good things, and maybe even some things that people might argue aren't so good. But when we start to pull out those things and realize where some of the gold nuggets were in some of these things, and things, it's like, yeah, that stuff really works, and then mixing that even with new stuff that they didn't know then, and being able to adapt all those things together is a really powerful thing. um, and obviously showed then, and so you had the Team Snow Valley thing, and then so that kind of got you kind of started into the coaching element of things, but you've kind of branched off into some other things outside of coaching teams, and I mean, you have the Hot Tubes juniors now that you work with as well.
Yes,
um,
I help Toby Stanton, the owner of the team, with some training camps, coach a few of his athletes, and it's partly me giving back to the sport that has given me so much. It's is partly keeping me young. It's these kids are teaching me every day, as well as Toby. So I'm continuing to learn, and helping people at the same time. They're helping me. It's a wonderful relationship.
yeah, definitely, and it's cool. I mean, Hot Tubes is if not it's one of the um, nice best junior programs in the country, and I always see them doing well at any of the races, nationals, and all that. So great program, and I heard some really great stuff from Danny Estevez about Hot Tubes and his experience on it, and we're gonna hopefully have a show soon with Danny as well, and just he's just got a great story, and some of the stuff from Hot Tubes is really cool. So being involved in a program like that is it's inspiring. But you have some other inspiring programs as well outside of racing, with the Coast to Coast for Cancer, and I'd like to touch on that a little bit. That's something you've been doing a lot of the last few years, and
This is
much different.
it snuck up on me. It's been 7 years now. We started in 2013, and it was me coaching four people doing Race Across America from Bristol Myers Squibb, excuse me. And what was amazing for me was the purpose behind this event, and the whys. It resonated with me from day one, and it has really changed my life. I met Josh Sherwood in the winter of 2012. He approached me that they wanted to do this race. We hit it off. Here was the focus. Here's what we want to do. Here's the purpose. And this team brought out the best in me, and we fed off each other. Very similar to my Snow Valley days. And the beautiful thing is still friends to this day. But to see what most of these individuals had been through on a personal level, and the whys behind doing this, there was a performance side to this. It is Race Across America, but it was the whys behind it that I don't want to get into it because they are extremely personal. But it was extremely moving, and it brought out the best in me. It brought out the passion of cycling again, and how cycling can and does change lives. And this is morphed from 4 people uh, in year one. To year two, we went back to Race Across America, and the BMS team actually set a world record for 4-person mixed relay, fastest time ever for four people. And it, in that same year, we also took 55 people across the U.S. And met this Race Across America start. And it's these are people in that year one. A lot of them weren't cyclists; they were just adventurers. They were leaders. These were people with heart and spirit, and we got them ready in 3 months. And these cycling enthusiasts, these mavericks, rode across the country. Now, they didn't ride the entire way. They rode 3 days of 75 miles each every day, and then handed it off to another team. But to see what these individuals could do, how they could balance everything, and the whys behind riding, just continued to inspire myself to be more and more involved with Bristol Myers Squibb and Coast to Coast for Cancer.
Yeah, and so that's kind of it's. I mean, it's grown quite a bit, and you have not only have the U.S. Part of that you've done every year, but there's a European component of that as well, right?
There is. So simultaneously in September, we take a group of 100 individuals across the U.S., starting in Cannon Beach, Oregon, and riding to Long Branch, New Jersey. And then we are also riding from Munich to London with stops in Milan, Nice, Girona, Tours, and Paris, and finally finishing in London.
Yeah, I mean it's
Yes, we've almost 1,000 people over the last 6 years now with Bristol Myers Squibb.
Yeah, I mean it's a huge undertaking as well. I mean, and this is something that's like you said, it's kind of snuck up on you, and it's really kind of grown into this pretty significant. I mean, now it's a year round, almost a year round thing to get this thing packaged and pulled off, and because you have not just an American component, we got this European component. And while you get things dialed, I've done enough of event promotion. You're like, yeah, okay, you get the structure there. It's still getting pulling together, and you have new people doing it every year. So it's not like you have the same people doing it. Like, oh, hey, we already know what's going on, Brian. We're good. It's like, no, you've got a new group of people to train up and get ready to do this. A new crew of people helping you and don't know all the stuff. So it's a lot of preparation, not just from the coaching standpoint, but from organizationally as well.
That's exactly the case. We were finishing last year in London, the end of September, and as we're finishing, we're already putting our bike order in at that time for 2019. So it is a year round event, but amazing team that's helping to support me, starting with Dana, and it's been extremely rewarding. It's something that I wish I had as an athlete when I was younger, and was able to experience something greater than just yourself. We know as pros, we're just so egocentric. Everything's laser focused just on ourselves and just on our results. But when you can take a step back and you're part of something way bigger than yourself, the transformation of each individual that takes place from the beginner to being able to accomplish this, balancing everything in their lives at this with 5 months of training. I mean, the sacrifices that these individuals are making to help patients, to help cure cancer. It's extremely powerful.
Yeah, and I had the opportunity to join you in 2016, and it was fantastic. And I kind of had this idea beforehand what it was going to be, and it was just it was different and different in a really cool way. I mean, just connecting with some of the people along those routes, and talking to people throughout the day. And there was some people that they just needed that. They just needed somebody there all day long. And I remember to spend this one day with this woman. I just talked her ear off all day and got her distracted. And she got done, and she was just full of tears and gives me this big hug. And she was like, "Oh my God, I can't believe I like, rode this whole 75 miles. I've never been able to do this. And you just kept me distracted and kept me talking the whole day. And I didn't realize the miles were going by. It was one of those hot 90 some degree days, right? But she just kept going. And it was just really cool to see people riding for a cause, for somebody they knew and their family, friend, whatever it was that had been fighting cancer, had fought cancer. They were riding for somebody to raise money for that. And they were doing something that was transformational for themselves. And seeing them do that and take themselves and commit and do that and being able to be part of their success was really, really cool. It was one of the coolest coaching experiences I've had. And it was not how I expected it to be, but it was definitely, it'll be one of those experiences. Besides riding from Denver to Columbus, the people connections were really cool. And I think I wanted to make sure we touched on that because I think that is, post Olympics and all how exciting all that stuff is. And what you're doing now is changing a lot of people's lives in that.
It certainly is, and we know it's easy to be a cynic in the cycling world, and it's
Right.
easy to be a cynic in the corporate world. But the bicycle and this event it's bringing out the best in every individual. At the end of the day, if we can share our knowledge, our experience, and our passion via the bike and using the bike as a tool to make the world a better place, dang, I'm all for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll put some links up and so forth. You guys are going to be, of course, having a 2019 version of the C2C, Coast to Coast for Cancer, and the European one. And we'll have some links up and get some of that information and as part of the podcast content that we've been posting. So people want to follow. You have a Facebook page as well for that event, and if they want to support riders or whatnot, we'll make sure that's available to people. But it is money that's also being raised directly for research, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct. I mean, these riders, their goal is to raise in the U.S. $500,000. Bristol Myers Squibb will match that money, and the nonprofit beneficiary is the V Foundation. We'll have links for you, but the more donations they get, Bristol Myers Squibb will match it up to $500,000.
That's awesome. So yeah, great stuff, and certainly an impressive career and some highlights. And I mean, I could talk race stories for probably about 3 days, and especially when you start talking about that points race, and I get all excited and trying to digest the race. And what I need to do is, you wouldn't happen to know if that's on YouTube anywhere. Is the race? Do you have a link to that race? Is it
It's
is it?
funny you should say that. I have a VHS and I haven't converted it to digital. I've been bogged down for 20 years. It's tucked away here. If you know how to convert from VHS to digital, we can talk and get that up there. And
Yeah, I think that would be a really cool one to see, and I'm sure we can do it. I've taken stuff before a long time ago. I haven't done it, and my computer now doesn't have the power, oddly enough. But we should do that. I mean, it's really cool. I look back. I look at some of Singleton's old races and try to learn from some of the stuff that he did because it's just racing's racing, and then start to look at some of those things. And that was all pre GoPro and all those kinds of things. But I think that would be a really cool race to watch you execute. And probably some really good lessons in there from some of the other riders as well. Even from a different era, some of the stuff just translates. I'd be excited to watch it, even if nobody else would. I would. So I'm selfishly motivated to want to watch this race. But no, this was cool, and it was really cool to hear kind of your growth in sport and how quickly it came up, and some of the influencers, and again, just being able to see, post pro career, being able to tap into, and the influence you've been able to have, really positive in people's lives, I think is a really great aspect. So I appreciate you sharing all that with us. We'll put some links up and stuff. But before we go, you have a lot of these juniors. What's the advice you give to some of the juniors, some of the guys starting up? And they think, yeah, I think I wanna go pro. And what's your advice to them in that arena?
Sure. Don't let anyone tell you you can't. Number one. Number two is failure is part of life. If you don't fail, you are not close to your potential. And my last one is a fun one from Star Wars and Yoda. Do or do not. There is no try.
Awesome. Exactly. And and I love those kinds of lessons. And it's you probably had a number of people naysay you along the way for a lot of different things, and being able to think big is really cool. And I think, and you got some good stars on hot tubes too, and those guys should be thinking big. So
they are. And I think when you look back, we've talked about the past a little bit. And, I've had a lot of great athletes over the years, and it's the past pros. It's the Scotts Wiesanskis. It's the Dominique Rollins, the Eric Youngs. Joe Malloy, a triathlete, is another one of my young pros from back in the day. I did try to get away from using these cliches, but I did sneak that one in right at the end. So my kids are going to cringe on that one. But it's this past that has taught us to where we are now. And the nice thing is, the Hot Tubes kids of today, the Johnny Browns, the BMSs, the Coast to Coast, these are all athletes. Some of them may not view themselves as that, but these individuals doing what they're doing, and they've learned from me based upon the talent that I've had in the past on and my experiences.
I think that's a great point to bring us here. Is the people doing Coast to Coast for Cancer are athletes too, and they may not be making their living at it, and they may not end up at the Olympics, but they're achieving things, and they're athletes out there, and that's awesome to see, and having that perspective of everybody can be an athlete in some vein is cool. So
it certainly is. The drive and dedication that they have. I wish some of my pros had that on some given days. There's no question when I say that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for sharing a lot of great stuff with us, and some good memories, and sharing some details about your silver medal race, and the inspiration of the Coast to Coast for Cancer. Really appreciate you coming on and taking the time with us.
Thanks so much, Todd. It was fun.
Great. Well, we'll talk to you soon, and we'll get some links. We'll let you know when the show is up, and we'll look forward to talking soon.
Sounds great. Thanks.
All right. Have a good night.
You too. Bye-bye.